The toast that wasn't a joke. Crystal glass rays. Practiced. To my daughter, she said, voice smooth and steady, who finally found a man patient enough to manage her history. History lingered. Not past. History. Like I was a problem file, someone had reluctantly agreed to inherit. A few people laughed. Kind that waits to see if it's safe. Hand tight around mine under the table. Not protectively. I felt it, the hesitation. And his jaw flexed once. He looked at me, not at her. Important. Normal. Even to him. And then there's a silence that feels like a verdict. The second one settled over the ballroom. 62 guests. Gold-rimmed plates. Party. My mother still holding her glass. Waiting for applause. My father stared down at the tablecloth. Talked. He'd heard versions of this before. Something inside my chest rise. Not tears. Clarity. It didn't break. I stood. Slowly. Every eye in the room toward me. Smile thinned. Sweetheart, she said lightly, lowering her glass, it's only a joke. That's the thing about humiliation. It's always labeled a joke. Walked toward the front of the ballroom, where the projector screen glowed softly, prepared for the slideshow she curated. Photos. Award ceremonies. A devoted mother looks like. Shifted behind me. He didn't grab my arm. But I heard him exhale. The plan. I reached my bag. Opened my laptop. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered, "What is she doing?" My mother's tone sharpened a degree. Danielle. Just my name. The screen flickered. Then white. I turned back to the room. I said evenly, I think we should share all of them. Opened. Forensic audit report. The word foundation shifted the air in the room. Not construction. Foundation. Profit my mother chaired for 12 years. The amount no one was supposed to notice. It was 11:47 p.m. when I saw it. The office was almost empty, lights dimmed, cleaning crew vacuum humming somewhere behind closed doors. And home. Instead, I refreshed the ledger. Internal reconciliation. Balanced. Profits don't balance perfectly. They misalign, they lag. This one looked curated. Line by line. What? $50. Harlow Consulting Group. Purpose, strategic outreach. Transitional housing units. We didn't hire strategy firms. The vendor file. No website. Registered in Delaware. It was. I traced the wire. Northgate Holdings, LLC Right Arrow Private Account. Ended at a local branch. 2 miles from my parents' house. My chest tightened. Same path. I stared at the screen for a long time. Nothing. It had to be nothing. Three months? 2 years? The pattern didn't wobble. Always under federal reporting triggers. Labeled consulting. Always rooted through shell layers. Count. Years. I didn't notice at first. I realized when I tried to scroll, and my fingers wouldn't respond properly. Calculated the confirmed total. $812,430. I leaned back slowly. When you know what the foundation funds. Housing unit costs roughly $240,000. And permits labor materials. $812,000 could have built 3 full units. 3 buildings. 1 winter where no child slept in a car. Hard. It was faces. Holding donated backpacks. Mothers standing at podiums thanking the foundation. My mother standing behind them, smiling for cameras. I closed my eyes. My finger hovered over the trash icon. If I delete this. If I never saw it. To choose. My hand shook. Just enough that I missed the icon twice. Up and walked to the bathroom. Locked the door. Looked at myself in the mirror. Wrong, I whispered. But I wasn't. Signature set. L. Upton. The woman who once told me. Pretty is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I laughed. I went back to my desk. Everything. Encrypted it. Folder. Project Hollow. Solid had just collapsed inside. Why? That night, I sat in my parked car outside my apartment for 30 minutes. Off. First time in my adult life. Of my mother. The line you don't cross. He coordinates. He doesn't call. His name lit up Thursday afternoon. I felt it immediately. Put a lot into this event, he began. No greeting. I know. A pause. To misread tone, he continued. Try not to make Saturday about you. I asked. Your mother is under enormous pressure. The foundation is negotiating major expansion. Donors will be there. Slowed. Carefully. She mentioned you were reviewing historical transactions, he said finally. Nonprofits are complex. You don't always understand strategic allocations. Dad, I said, very evenly. Over $800,000 were routed through shell entities into a private account. Silence. Please handle things privately. Shock. He exhaled. Her has given this family everything, he replied. Her reputation feeds a lot of people. Staff, board members, political relationships. One wrong move and it all collapses. Something inside me shift. Not rage. You're asking me to ignore it. Asking you not to destroy your own mother. And there it was. I was the danger. Becomes public, he continued, voice firm now. Your name is attached, you sit on advisory panels, your firm could be questioned. You think exposure won't splash back on you. He was protecting the architecture. And what about the families who were supposed to get housing? I asked. He didn't answer that. Don't be the one who tears this family down. This was surgical. Not loud, but precise. I felt 12 years old again. Like I was ungrateful. He softened his tone. Through Saturday, smile, celebrate, we'll handle this quietly next week. Then we negotiate your silence. Ended, I didn't move for a long time. My father had never defended me in a room. Not once. Without hesitation. Charity hurt more than the fraud. This wasn't misunderstanding. Mother curated the image. Mother reinforced the perimeter. And I was expected to protect both. Saturday morning, the guest list grew again. 2 council members. 3 high-level donors. The smile that didn't break. Mother didn't flinch. Rush forward. She didn't raise her voice. And she smiled. I'd controlled. Smile you wear when photographers are nearby. Danielle, she said softly, stepping closer, sweetheart, this isn't the time. Sweetheart again. I didn't look at her. The room. Members. Porters near the back pretending not to record. Gerald Marsh still staring at the projected numbers. The second page glowed on the wall. 10 years of transfers. Authorization signature. Signature. Which stood repetition. And repetition is never an accident. My mother moved beside me now. As an internal review, she said gently to the guests. Danielle's very thorough. She sometimes mistakes provisional allocations for finalized disbursements. As denial. And inexperienced. A murmur rippled through the tables. Stepped half a pace closer behind me. Not touching. I scrolled to the next slide. Account routing. Private deposit ledger. Local. From her residence. Gerald stood up slowly. Linda, he said carefully, is that your personal authorization code? She didn't look at the screen. And that smile never moved. She said warmly, you know how expansion cycles work. Funds are temporarily redirected before final placement. We discussed restructuring last spring. Blink. Said quietly, not personal accounts. Personal landed hard. People shifted in their seats. This is not the forum for this, he snapped. As real emotion of the night. Toward him. No, I said calmly, it's exactly the forum. 62 witnesses. Dix. My mother's eyes flicked to mine. The smile thinned. Slightly. Only I could hear. Hit deeper than the toast. Because it wasn't about guilt. She believed I wouldn't survive this. Believed I would regret it. She believed I would fold. I almost did. Headlines. Professional scrutiny. Family collapse. Trembled. I felt it. The urge to close the laptop. Misunderstanding. Walk away. Housing units. The 12 families. And the fact that she wasn't apologizing. Calculating. I turned back to the room. Reflect consulting disbursements, I said evenly. Gerald's hand went to the back of a chair to steady himself. Is this accurate? He asked me. Yes. She didn't answer immediately. Because Linda Upton never hesitated publicly. Felt it. My father stepped forward again. Insisted. Funds were reallocated temporarily. Gerald asked. No one answered. Pretending. Phones were up now. And my mother finally did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Controlled. Danielle, she said quietly, if you wanted to destroy me, you could have just told me. I. Frame. This is destruction, I asked. She leaned closer. Whispered. Every board, every partnership, you think people reward daughters who expose their mothers? Isolation. It's time that night. My throat tightened. Truth doesn't always make you popular. And I felt the cost landing. Gerald picked up his phone. He said calmly into it, we need a full external audit Monday morning, court authorized. Court sucked the air from the room. Now it wasn't narrative. And my mother finally stopped smiling. Wasn't done. Was worse than denial. Room against me. Like, she didn't scream. Did. Room. Defend myself in the middle of my daughter's engagement party, she said, voice thick with restrained emotion. But I will say this. Paused. Danielle has struggled these past few years. There it was. She's been under a lot of pressure, career stress, anxiety. A few guests exchanged glances. And you gently. She tends to fixate when she feels powerless. My stomach dropped. This was character assassination. She asked for expanded financial access months ago, my mother added. When the board limited that request, she was hurt. It's clean. Plausible. I felt heat rise up my neck. First time that night. Emotion almost overtook composure. Because this wasn't about fraud anymore. This was about credibility. The numbers would look retaliatory. Step beside me fully now. His voice steady. 10 years of financial records. Turned to him. Come. I'm suggesting my daughter is very good with data, she said, and sometimes very poor with context. Well, nodded slightly. Doubt spreads quietly. Have. Gerald spoke again. You not authorize transfers into a personal account. She didn't answer immediately. She looked at me. Searching. Almost pleading. I saw something human. Or Fear. Prison. Exposure. Identity.
Shaking. Because victory doesn't feel clean when it's your own family. Nathan's hand found mine again. Not protective. Grounding. My father wouldn't look at me. He looked at the floor. And that hurt more than shouting ever could. The catering staff began clearing untouched plates. My mother picked up her purse, smoothed her dress. And for the first time in my life, she didn't have a speech. But this wasn't the end. Because when power collapses, it doesn't disappear quietly. It retaliates. And 3 days later, it did. The morning after optics. Sunday morning felt quieter than it should have. No dramatic phone calls, no screaming headlines, just sunlight through the blinds and my phone face down on the kitchen counter. I didn't want to touch it. Nathan was making coffee when it finally buzzed. Then again. I turned it over. 32 notifications. 2 missed calls from unknown numbers. 3 texts from board members. 5 from people who hadn't spoken to me in years, and 1 from my mother. We need to talk before this spirals further. Not, I'm sorry. Not, you misunderstood. Not even, call me. Just containment language. Before this spirals. Like the spiral wasn't caused by 10 years of transfers. Nathan watched my face carefully. You don't have to open them, he said. But I did. The foundation's board had scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning. Gerald had already filed for a temporary financial freeze pending independent audit. 2 local journalists had requested comment. And buried between all of it, a message from a donor. If this is true, I want my contributions accounted for immediately. The shift had begun. Optics were collapsing, but something else hit harder. A text from one of my friends at the back table. Are you okay? That was intense. Intense. That's how people describe trauma when they don't know where to place it. I set the phone down. My chest felt hollow. Not victorious. Not relieved. Just emptied. Nathan placed a mug in front of me. You did the right thing. I nodded. But the right thing doesn't erase loss. Because here's the truth no one talks about. When you expose someone powerful, you don't just expose them. You expose yourself, your history, your connection, your silence up until now. And the internet doesn't care about nuance. By noon, speculation threads had started online, not major media, local forums, community groups, and I saw it. The first pivot narrative. Disgruntled daughter attacks foundation chair at engagement party. It spread fast, because it was easier, cleaner, simpler than fraud. Nathan saw it too. They don't have the documents, he said. They don't need them, I replied quietly. Narratives travel faster than evidence. And my mother understood that better than anyone. By Monday morning, the foundation's bank accounts were temporarily restricted. An external forensic team was contracted. Gerald's attorney filed preliminary breach notices. And my mother? She released a statement. It hit inboxes at 2001 p.m. Recent allegations made at a private family event are being reviewed internally. We are confident that once full context is examined, the integrity of the foundation's leadership will be reaffirmed. Private family event. Integrity reaffirmed. Context. The language was surgical. No mention of numbers, no mention of audit, just tone control. She wasn't panicking. She was repositioning. That night, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered before I could think. Her voice was calm. Too calm. You've embarrassed the foundation, she said. Not. You've hurt me. Not. Why did you do this? You've embarrassed the foundation. I exposed financial misconduct, I replied. Silence. Then. You could have handled this privately. There it was again. Privacy as virtue. I tried, I said. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she asked, do you understand what public doubt does to donor confidence? My chest tightened. Even now, she was speaking in metrics, not morality. Do you understand what siphoning housing funds does to families? I asked quietly. Long pause. You always reduce everything to numbers, she said. That hurt. Because numbers were what proved the truth. You reduced families to numbers, I replied. She exhaled sharply. I built that foundation. And you hollowed it, I said before I could stop myself. Silence again. Then her voice changed. Less composed. More personal. You think this makes you brave? I swallowed. No. I think it makes me accountable. The line landed heavier than I expected, because accountability doesn't feel heroic. It feels isolating. You've destroyed your relationship with me, she said. I closed my eyes. You destroyed that the moment you chose the transfers. And that was the first time I said it without shaking. She hung up without another word.
I stared at the wall for a long time after. Not triumphant. There are moments in life where a door doesn't slam. Real fracture didn't come from press releases. From something smaller. Something quieter. Patient ever did. 3 days later, I received a message from someone I hadn't expected. And it made everything heavier. It was a voicemail. Number again. I almost didn't listen. Hi, my name is Carla. I live in the Northside Transitional Units. I was told you're the reason the audit started. Trembled. I sat down slowly. Continued. Apartment 3 years ago through the foundation. I heard there might be funding issues. If you're protecting that, I just thank you. Ended. No last name. No strategy. Attitude. And that's when I finally cried. During the exposure. Phone call. Now. Tracked anymore. It was a mother in a small apartment, somewhere hoping the heat stayed on this winter. And suddenly, Nathan found me on the kitchen floor. Not collapsed. Phone in my hand. Beside me without asking questions. I handed him the phone. Then he wrapped his arms around me. First time since Saturday. I let myself break. 4. When you choose integrity over blood, you don't feel strong. Even if both parents are still alive. And an audit team contacted me later that week. Professional. Requesting documentation. Everything. Encrypted. Detached. But inside. Because my mother hadn't called again. My father hadn't either. Not explanation. Absence. By the end of the week, 2 major donors publicly suspended contributions pending audit findings. Donors began distancing themselves. The narrative was shifting. The house with closed curtains. Not a cafe. Office. One, where I learned how to set a formal table before I was tall enough to reach the cabinet. Dining room, where she used to rehearse speeches while I did homework in the corner. Pulled into the driveway, the curtains were drawn. Midday. That told me everything. We're over. This was private now. He looked older. Quickly. Something inside him had been quietly removed. Sitting room, he said. No hug. Just fatigue. I stepped inside. The kind of stillness that follows a storm. I was seated on the edge of the couch. No makeup. No armor. For a moment, we just looked at each other. And it hit me. Presentation before. Tired, she said. It wasn't cruel. Just observational. I replied. She nodded once. No cameras. No Gerald. Just the truth sitting in the room, heavy and undeniable. They're auditing everything, she said finally. I know. I know. You didn't have to do it publicly. There it was again. Like that was the betrayal. No private option, I said quietly. Her eyes sharpened. I did, I said. Her. 3 months ago. Office. When she dismissed me. Full oversight yet. Way first. It was temporary, she said. Not denial. Confession. But movement. Asked. She didn't answer. Do you know what it's like to build something from nothing? Her voice shifted. More human. What it's like to sit in rooms where men dismiss you until your name is attached to results, to fight for funding, to make promises donors expect you to keep. Quiet. I'd watched her fight. Claw her way into relevance. You think I enjoyed moving funds? She continued. You think I didn't plan to replace every dollar? Needed liquidity, she said. Short term, I was covering a private investment loss. Was mistake. Fusion. Old housing funds, I asked. Hardened. I invested to stabilize long-term growth. With money that wasn't yours. Her fingers tightened around each other. Fix it, she whispered. And for the first time, not calculating. Strategic. The question I couldn't answer. It wasn't dramatic. Manipulative. It was quiet. And that broke something in me. Love doesn't disappear just because trust does. I took a breath. Her shoulders trembled slightly. I- The hardest answer. Loving you doesn't mean protecting your lies, I said. The words felt heavy leaving my mouth. She turned toward me slowly. There it was. All framing. But this time, did. I chose what was right, I said. And that included strangers. So family means nothing. Family means accountability, I said quietly, or it means nothing at all. Looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. Or maybe trying to find the daughter she thought she raised. You've changed, she said. I stopped pretending. Stepped further into the room. We need to speak to counsel, he said gently. It sounded surreal. Lawyers. Hence. Process and consequence. Toward me slowly. Stopped a few feet away. I need character statements. Remorse. Will you testify for me? She asked. Froze. Not headlines. Hers. Heartbeat in my throat. Flashed. Her correcting my posture before my first debate. At my engagement. No man would want her. I won't lie, I said. Her eyes. I didn't ask you to. Nuance. I stepped back slightly. Truth, I said. And if that hurts you. I hesitated. To admit. The silence that followed me. Or headlines. My mother's name moved from chairwoman to under investigation. Wrong. Not public quiet. Quiet. Friends who stopped calling. One-line emails. Questions that never came. It wasn't loud rejection. Soft. No one wants to stand too close to controversy. Smells like integrity. At work, conversations paused when I entered conference rooms. Not dramatically. Enough to notice. Partner pulled me aside. Eckerd, he said gently, people are wondering if this will become a pattern. Contagious? I asked. As in loyalty concerns. Again. People use when they mean silence. I held his gaze. I said. He nodded slowly. Not endorsing. Risk. That's when it hit me. This would follow me. It rearranges your life. The article dropped. A regional publication. Measured but sharp. Foundation chair under investigation following public allegations by daughter. Not as whistleblower. Inescapable. Read it before I did. It's fair, he said quietly. Fair? The comments were worse. Some brutal. Trail for attention. Probably inheritance drama. The narratives multiplied. Something I didn't expect. Shame. For being visible. Kind of person who makes private fractures public. One night, I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection. And I asked myself something dangerous. Was there another way? I wanted. Because regret doesn't always come from being wrong. Sometimes it comes from being alone. Nathan found me there. I ruined everything, I whispered. He shook his head. But revealing and ruining feel identical in the moment. Audit's interim report came in. Preliminary findings confirmed intentional misallocation. Repeated. Patterned. The language was clean.
The crack in my own foundation. Nathan had been steady through everything. Calm, grounded, present. Until he wasn't. It happened on a Tuesday night. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the TV on, neither of us watching. "I need to ask you something," he said. His tone was careful. Too careful. "Okay," I replied. "If this goes to trial and it gets uglier, are you prepared for what that does to us?" Us. I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. "My firm's already fielded questions," he said. "Clients are cautious." Cautious. There it was again. Distance. Measured risk. "I don't regret what you did," he continued quickly. "But I need to know you understand the cost." The word cost felt heavier than $800,000. "You think I didn't consider it?" I asked softly. "I think you didn't consider us," he said. That stung. Because maybe he was right. When I stood in that ballroom, I wasn't thinking about engagement photos, or seating charts, or honeymoon plans. I was thinking about families and apartments, about integrity, about truth. But relationships aren't built only on ideals. They're built on stability, and I had detonated ours in the middle of a celebration. "You're asking if I'd do it again," I said quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence did. I looked at him. Really looked. The man who had stood beside me in a room full of donors. The man who held me on the kitchen floor. The man who chose me. And I realized something uncomfortable. If faced with the same evidence, I would still do it. Even knowing this. Even knowing it might cost him. That realization broke my voice when I finally spoke. "Yes," I said. The honesty hung between us. Heavy. Final. He closed his eyes briefly. "Not angry, just absorbing." "That's what scares me," he whispered. "Not that I exposed my mother, but that I would choose truth over comfort, over security, over him, if necessary." "I don't want to lose you," I said. "Then we have to build something stronger than reaction," he replied. "Stronger than scandal. Stronger than fear. Stronger than the shadow of my family." And for the first time since the engagement party, I felt something unfamiliar. Not doubt. Responsibility. Not just for justice, but for my own life. Because exposing corruption is one thing, building something healthy after it is another. Nathan reached for my hand, but his grip wasn't automatic this time. It was intentional, fragile, like something under construction. And I understood then. The audit wasn't the only thing happening. My mother's foundation was collapsing. But so was the version of me that lived in her orbit, and what replaced it would determine everything. Because the court date was set, the plea decision was pending, and I was about to walk into a room where my testimony wouldn't just decide her fate. It would define mine. When the gavel fell. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not grand, not dramatic, just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, and a seal mounted on the wall that made everything feel official in a way that parties and headlines never could. There were no chandeliers here, no donors, no champagne glasses raised in false celebration, just consequence. I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded too tightly in my lap. Across the aisle, my mother. No statement necklace, no commanding posture, just a navy suit and a file folder resting on her knees. She looked ordinary, and that was the strangest part. Power had drained out of her like color from an old photograph. When she glanced at me, it wasn't with anger. It wasn't with strategy. It was something softer, almost resignation. Her attorney had advised a plea, reduced charges in exchange for cooperation and restitution. She had agreed, not because she believed she was wrong, but because the evidence was airtight. 10 years of transfers, $800,000, layered accounts, intent. The judge entered. We stood, and suddenly everything felt very small. This wasn't about legacy anymore. It was about record. Permanent. Documented. When the charges were read aloud, the words sounded colder than I imagined. Misappropriation of nonprofit funds. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraudulent transfer. Each phrase stripped something away. Title. Image. Reputation. When asked how she pleaded, her voice was steady. Guilty. The word didn't echo. It settled. Heavy. Final. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because she admitted it, but because hearing it out loud meant I would never again be able to pretend there was another explanation. No misunderstanding, no context, no temporary, just truth. The judge reviewed the agreement. Restitution. Probation. Professional ban from nonprofit leadership. Public record. No prison time, but permanent consequence. And when the gavel finally fell, it wasn't loud, just a single crack of wood against wood. But inside me, something split open. This was justice, measured, clinical, legal, and it hurt more than chaos ever did. Because chaos leaves room for hope. Verdicts don't. People began standing, shuffling out, papers gathering, life moving forward. But I stayed seated, watching her. She didn't cry, she didn't collapse. She gathered her folder, stood, and for the first time in months, She walked toward me without calculation. No cameras here, no narrative to control. Just us. She stopped a few feet away. I suppose this is what accountability feels like, she said quietly. There was no sarcasm in it. Just exhaustion. I nodded. Yes. A long silence. I was wrong, she said. 3 words. Late. But real. And those 3 words undid me more than everything else combined. Because I hadn't needed punishment. I had needed acknowledgement. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to destroy you, I said. I know, she replied. And for the first time, I believed her. She looked smaller, but not hollow, just human. I don't know who I am now, she admitted. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not ambition, not control, vulnerability without audience. You're still my mother, I said softly. Not absolution, not approval, just fact. Her eyes filled, but she held steady. And you're still my daughter, she replied. We stood there in the quiet aftermath. No applause, no condemnation, just consequence shared between blood. Nathan approached slowly, placing a steady hand at the small of my back. Not possessive. Grounding. My father lingered near the exit. He looked tired, but lighter. As if truth, even painful truth, had released something he'd been carrying too. My mother stepped back. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I expect growth, I replied. It wasn't rehearsed, it just came. She nodded once. Then she walked toward the doors. No dramatic exit, no last speech, just a woman learning how to exist without a title. I watched her leave. And I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since that night in the ballroom. Grief. Not for what I exposed, but for what we could have been. Nathan squeezed my hand. It's over, he whispered. I shook my head gently. No, I said. It's honest. Outside the courthouse, the sky was painfully blue, life moving, cars passing, people laughing somewhere down the street. The world didn't pause for personal reckoning. And that felt right. I turned to Nathan. I'm not my mother, I said quietly. He smiled softly. No, he replied, you're not. But I also wasn't the daughter who needed approval anymore. I wasn't the woman hiding spreadsheets in bathroom stalls. I wasn't the child trying to earn applause. I was someone who chose truth when it cost comfort. And that choice reshaped everything. Our engagement didn't dissolve. It matured, slower, more deliberate. Built on conversation instead of performance, the foundation rebuilt too. New leadership, stricter oversight, families still housed, lights still on. Carla left another voicemail months later. They fixed the heating system, she said happily. My kids are warm this winter. That message meant more than any headline ever could. And my mother? She started volunteering quietly at a legal aid clinic. No board seat, no spotlight, just paperwork, listening, learning. We don't talk every day, but when we do, there are no speeches, just honesty. And sometimes, that's enough. Because here's what I learned. Love without accountability becomes corruption. Power without humility becomes damage. And silence in the name of loyalty? That's how harm survives. The night she toasted that no man would want me, she thought she was defining my worth. She was wrong. A man did want me. But more importantly, I wanted myself. Even when it was hard. Even when it cost me. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. Truth doesn't destroy families. Secrets do. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let the gavel fall. If this story touched you, subscribe to Silent Tales Studio and like